Have you ever heard of the term pinning? What does it even mean? And how can I get better at it? By the end of today's video, you will have downright mastered the tactical concept of pin. So, let's begin. Hello friends, my name is Ishan and in today's video, we're gonna be looking at the pin. What is a pin? Well, a pin is a tactic where there are three pieces involved: the pinner, the pinned piece and the rear piece. The pinner or the pinning piece is the one that attacks the pinned piece. It can be either a queen, rook or bishop. It has to be a line mover, which means it's a long range piece. The pinned piece can be anything except the king. And the rear piece is usually the one which is being pinned against. So if you move the pinned piece, then the pinning piece can capture the rear piece. That's basically the whole idea of it. Now we're going to look at some tactics and look at some examples of the pin. As you can see on the screen, we have a position where black's queen and bishop both are attacked. So what should black do? Well, the correct answer is the shocking bishop into c3. The problem is, if you play something like rook d1, then he can play queen into f6, with the point that he is threatening both queen g7 and queen h8 checkmate. So you can play an intermediate move rook into e1, and after king h2 you will have to save both the checkmates, and the only way to do that is queen h6. But then after bishop e1, white has two bishops for the rook, and that will seriously lead to some complications, which is mostly good for white. We don't want to go into all of that. So what we do is we play bishop into c3. Also, if you play directly queen h6, then queen f6 is obviously falling. So after bishop into c3, we have to realize that black was already a rook up in this position. So it's okay to give a piece back. We will still be an exchange up. Bishop c3, rook into c1, and now bishop d4, with the point that black's queen is now pinned, and after queen takes, rook takes, black is an exchange up and should win comfortably. Moving on to the next example. In this position, white has to try and win this game, which is not very easy because black also has the threat of moving his pawn down the board. So what can white do? Well, the correct answer is d7. And black's only move to stop the pawn is rook d5. And now we play rook h7 with the threat of promoting with a check to the king on a7. So he cannot capture our queen. Now obviously black's king has to move somewhere. So if he moves to b6, then we see the concept of pin in action. We play king e4 with the idea that if his rook moves away from the d file, then we can promote our pawn safely. So he has to play rook d6, logical. And now we play rook h6. So you can see that this brilliant pin in action, and black cannot stop the pawn from promoting, because after he takes, we promote, and it should be a win. Also, if after king e4 black were to play king c6, then we can play rook h6 check. The point being, the king has to stay to the defense of the d5 rook. So he will move to king c5, and now again we use the same concept, rook h5, pin the rook, promote the pawn. And you might ask, what if black played to the 8th rank on the first move? Well, if he plays king b8, then after king e4, rook d6, king e5, it should be a win, because after king c7, which is the only move to defend the rook and not leave the d file, we have d8 queen check, and the black king is overloaded. He is in double check, and he has to keep defending the rook on d6 as well, and he has to also capture the queen. So if he captures the queen, then we win the rook, and we should mate very soon. I hope you understand, guys. Let's move on. In this position, it's white to play again, but black has many threats, which include king g3 and rook a3. So what should white do? Turns out white must act fast and create threats of his own. White plays h7 with the idea of threatening to promote h8, so black has to react. If white is greedy and plays rook into g4, then after rook a6, white cannot defend the h6 pawn. So he'll play king h2, and maybe after king f3, king h3, rook h6, rook g8, king f4, it should be a draw because white's king is way far behind the pawn and cannot help it in promotion. So greed doesn't work here. You need to be fast. So h7. Now black has some tries. If he plays rook a8, then rook g8 wins obviously. So he can try rook a3 with the threat of mate. Obviously there's not much we can do. The only move we can play is rook f6 check. And now after king g3, which is again another mate threat, we have to find rook a6. Brilliant move. The point is, if you take rook a6, then we promote on h8 and defend the a1 square. So let's just see how this works. If we take rook a6, we promote, and as you can see, the queen defends a1. So there is no mate, which was not true when the rook was on f6 because the rook was in the way of the queen. That's why rook a6. Now black doesn't have to take the rook. He can also move away. So let's say he plays rook b3. Now what? Because now if we promote, rook b1 checkmate is possible, which we cannot stop. So we again deflect him to the a file using the pin. That's right, rook a3. You'll see this concept mostly throughout every puzzle that we solve today, but it's kind of hard to digest the fact that you can just give up your rook like this and pin him. So when he takes, obviously we promote and stop the checkmate and thus win the game. I hope you like this puzzle. Let's move on. So now that we've seen 3 examples, I want you to start solving these puzzles on your own. White to play, pause the video and try to find the answer. I genuinely request you to please pause the video because that's the way you can benefit most from this video. I also used to think, why should I pause the video? But the truth is, after I tried to pause the video and actually think, my game improved a lot. So please do pause the video and actually try to think of the answer. I hope you found the answer. It was not very hard. The correct answer is knight into g7. The point is, if you take bishop into g7, there's bishop h6, and after let's say rook e1 check bishop f1, there's no way of stopping queen into g7 mate. Seemed easy, right? Well, for those of you who are actually a little stronger, I hope you had seen f5, which was actually a more stubborn defense because now there are not many options. If you play bishop f5 now, then bishop g7, bishop h6, and now rook e1 is a mate. So you can't do that. What else? After f5, if you don't take the pawn and decide to give a discovered check, your queen hangs. So that's why the only move is knight into f5 check. When after king h8, queen h5 should be easily winning. As you can see, there are many threats, some including knight d6, which is also a fork. We had seen this in the last video. You can check it out here. Then knight h4 to g6, another type of fork. And the moment the knight moves, the bishop on d3 will be unlocked and the queen and the bishop together can checkmate the king. So there are a lot of threats and white should be winning because black's pieces are all on the queen side. So this is easily winning. But I applaud you if you found the move f5, which means you're really good at thinking about the opponent's moves. So let's move on to the next game. Now this position is a bit trickier, but obviously, as we had seen in the last video, the puzzles increase in difficulty as we move on. So you have to expect some difficulty around the 3rd or 4th puzzle. This is black to play. Please pause the video and try to find the answer. Well, for those of you who paused the video, the correct answer is queen b5, which is again an obvious pin. Now you will say, what's so tough about that? The truth is, there are a few variations which you need to spot. The first being, what if he plays c4? Now here also, when I myself was solving this puzzle, I thought long and hard about what can be done. And finally, I realized that the c4 pawn is not at all defended. Do you know why? Because of another pin. So queen into c4 works. Because a pin is never only against a pinned piece. It can also be against a square. What I mean is, there can also be a pin on a potential threat rather than there being a piece behind the pinned piece. So the knight can't take the queen because it was pinned to not letting the rook go to e1, which is in fact checkmate. So I realized that this kind of pin is also in play in this position, and after that solving the puzzle was easy. Because now you can see the knight is pinned to the e1 square. So a pin does not always have to be to a piece. And if he plays king e2 after queen b5, then we can simply take and fork him. We had seen the fork in the last video. Do check it out if you haven't already. Moving on to the next position. This puzzle is again slightly more tricky. It might look simple due to the less number of pieces on the board, but trust me, it's gonna be hard. White to play. Pause the video and try to find the answer. Well, what did you think white had to do? Did he have to win? Did he have to draw? Well, if you were able to conclude that the best white can do is draw here, you're right. Not all positions are meant to win. Sometimes you have to just save yourself and get that half point extra. So white plays f3 here. Obviously black's threat was h2 followed by bishop f3, and when there's no way to stop the pawn, so f3 should be the first move that comes into your consideration. After f3, there are two variations, both of which transpose into the same main idea which you have to find. Let's just check this one out. If he plays h2, then obviously you need to bring your king to stop the pawn, and now he can play bishop f3. Most people don't see this and they already conclude that, oh, it's a draw, it's okay, the bishop can't move, I'll play king g3, king h2. You have to see this also, because technically your king cannot stop the pawn. But again, the theme of this video is pin, so obviously there should be a pin, and that pin is bishop d1. Beautiful. The point is, if you promote to a queen, then I take and it's a draw. So that's a fork, and here if he takes the bishop, then I can play king g2 and take the h2 pawn. So there we saw the example of pin. Also he can try, after f3 he can try taking bishop f3 first also, leads to the same variation, king f2, h2, bishop d1. I hope you understand. Let's move on to puzzle number 4. This puzzle is a bit of defense, a bit of attack, so both ways you need to be careful. White to play, pause the video and try to find the answer. I hope you pause the video. The correct answer is rook a5 check. Well, if you played e7, you really need to look at the opponent's ideas, because rook h2 is just mate. I mean, what are you even doing? So you need to avoid the mate threat obviously. Play rook a5 check. And once he moves king g6, now you can think of e7 and everything. So e7, the only way to stop the pawn is by rook e2. Remember that king f7 is not possible because of the bishop. So rook e2 is the only way to stop the pawn. And now we see another brilliant act of sacrifice in this position. Bishop e6, blocking the line of the rook. Our threat, simply promote. So what can black do? He has to take. And now my friends, I am pretty sure you must have guessed the move. It is in fact rook a6. I think by the end of this video you will be familiarly acquainted with this concept of just sacking pieces for pinning other pieces. It will come, don't worry. And we win, because in fact even the bishop is going to hang now. That was a good position. Let's move on to an even harder one. Probably I'd say my favorite. This position is obviously, as I had said, harder. It is also personally my favorite. White to play, pause the video and try to find the answer. I hope you paused the video. The answer is queen b5 check. Here's a tip. In any tactical position, always try to look at the forcing moves, which are checks, captures and threats, before you consider anything else in these positions. That way you will be able to save a lot of time calculating moves that you didn't need to calculate. Anyway, after queen b5 check, the point is if you move your king, then queen takes b7 is a simple win. So what should we do? Well, you must realize that black can play bishop d5 when white's best hope is a draw. Yes, that's right friends. Even though white has an exchange, he's going for a draw because of the numerous threats that black has. So after bishop d5, what should we do? Well, it's not every day that we just seeing a bishop is blocking the check and the queen just goes and captures it. That's right, queen d5 is the correct answer. The point is we have to unpin the rook at all costs, even if we give up a queen. After e takes d5, we play rook g3. See what I'm doing here? If the queen takes g3, it's a stalemate. Brilliant. And if he plays any other move, let's say if he plays king f4, then we take and king g2. We have the opposition and this should be a draw. By the way, if you're confused about opposition and how this is a draw, if you're confused about all of that, check out my endgame playlist here. So that leaves d4. He can't move his king, he can't take the rook, so he can play d4. Now we need to take care, because if we play rook into g4 now, after king into g4, king g2, king f4, king f2, d3, black wins. Again, we had seen a similar position in my endgame series, so do check it out if you haven't already. The point is wherever our king moves, black can maintain the opposition. For example, king f1, king f3, and we lose. So that doesn't work. Care needs to be taken here. So we play king g2 with the point of getting our king closer as well, because his queen is still pinned, right? So he can't do much about that. Also, he can play d3, he can play queen into g3, he can play king f4. Let's look at all of them. If he plays king f4, then again we take and we just shimmy over to the pawn, and this time after king d2 he can't continue the opposition and it's a draw. If he plays queen into g3, then after king into g3, king here, king here, king here maybe, king e2, king e4, king d2, again it's a draw. So that leaves d3. After d3, again my favorite part of this puzzle, we don't take on g4 because we had already seen how that loses. If you play this and after king f4 we lose, so that doesn't work. Well, the only move that works here is king f1. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I love this move because it's just so hard to see yet so simple to understand. The point is if he takes the rook, it's stalemate. Also after king f1, we simply don't care whether he will take our rook or not. We're just getting our king closer to the pawn so we can take his queen at the right time and then secure the draw. What I mean is after king f4, rook into g4, king into g4, king e1, it's a draw. Nice puzzle, right? But I've saved the best for last. The hardest puzzle of today, excluding the bonus puzzle of course, is on its way. So this is the sixth and probably the hardest puzzle that we will solve today. White to play, pause the video and try to find the answer. If you did solve this, trust me, you're a good player. Also, don't forget to comment down below your answer to this puzzle as well as the bonus puzzle. Well, I hope you solved the puzzle. The answer is rook a7. It's obvious, right? The theme is about pins, so we pin the bishop. Well, you're gonna see a lot more pins than you expected. Now, obviously you'll think, what's so hard about this puzzle? Why isn't white already winning? You have to realize that if white loses his e5 pawn, then it's a draw. because unless he has an extra pawn, the rook versus knight or rook versus bishop will be a draw. So for those of you who played e into f6, I mean, you can't miss bishop c8, right? It's just a pin, and now black is winning. So rook a7, and now the speciality of this puzzle is that not only do you have to find hard moves for white, you also have to find the defenses for black, just like we had seen in the first puzzle f5. Similarly, black here plays knight d7. Obviously, if we take rook into a6, and after king b4, there is no way to save the e5 pawn. The best you can do is trade it off like this, but this is still a draw if played correctly, and we don't want to take that risk. So what can white do? The funny thing is, both the pieces are hanging, but it looks like white can't capture either. Or is it? Why can't white simply take the rook? Well, if you said bishop c8, it is valid. But you should never stop calculating. Always try to think one move extra and see if there are any resources. In this case, e6 is the brilliant move. The point is, if you take the rook, then after I take, you can't stop promotion. Also, if you try to bring your king, then I take f7, and even though you are a bishop up in this position, you can't stop the promotion. So after e6, the logical move is obviously f takes e6. In this position, white has to play rook c7. So now bishop has only one move, bishop a6, and now we see how the tables have turned. First the bishop was pinning the rook, and now the rook will pin the bishop, and white wins. Brilliant, right? Let's move on. So guys, this is the bonus puzzle of today. If you want, I'll give you a hint. It's white to play and draw. We'll discuss the answer in the next video. Oh, I almost forgot. We have to look at the answer to the bonus puzzle from the first video. So as you can see in this position, this is the bonus puzzle. The correct answer is rook f5 check, when if black plays king g7, then after king h3, g1 queen, rook g5 check, it's a draw, because with whatever you capture, it's gonna be a stalemate. And if black plays king e7, then after rook e5 check, king f8, rook e1, bishop into e1, king h3. Obviously, if you promote to a queen, it's stalemate. If you promote to a bishop, that doesn't make sense. If you have two bishops of a dark square color, how will you win? So the only option is to promote to a knight, because it is possible to checkmate with a knight and a bishop. But now we see the importance of the fork. King g2, and after knight e2, king f1. So here we see the king can also fork pieces. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so I can keep making content like this. Do comment below the answers of the puzzle or whichever puzzle you like the most. Till then, see you in the next video. Bye.